Now we'll get to the section for the wives. So this will highlight basically the position of the husband that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has established within the family unit, and then the responsibilities that the wives owe to the husband in order so that they can fulfill that position. The first aspect that needs to be understood is that the husband becomes, after marriage, the number one priority for the wife, even above her own parents as well. And we mentioned the mindset behind it, or the rationale behind it, was that the very essence of caretaking and the very essence of fulfilling responsibilities so that she's able to live a normal, decent life will reside on the shoulders of the husband. Therefore, he essentially becomes the number one priority after marriage for her. And there's a famous hadith of the Rasul ﷺ where the companion 𝗪𝗵𝗿𝗲, he went to Ash-Sham. He traveled all the way to Ash-Sham. And in Ash-Sham, he saw many of the people making sujood to the bishops and the patriarchs and the priests over there, the religious authority over there. People would go and literally prostrate and make sujood to them. So when 𝗪𝗵𝗿𝗲 saw this, he said that we revere the Rasul ﷺ even more than they revere their priests and their rabbis and their bishops. So when I go back to Medina, I will also prostrate to the Rasul ﷺ. So that's exactly what he did. He went back to Medina. When he saw the Rasul ﷺ, he immediately went into sujood to him. So the Rasul ﷺ told him to get up, and he corrected him that nobody is deserving of being prostrated to except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only Allah deserves that particular act, that we make sujood only to Him. And had prostration been permissible to anybody other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it would have been permissible for the wife to prostrate to her husband. And this is by virtue of the responsibility that he is taking over in protecting and looking after her. This is a great aspect as well. For example, if an intruder comes into the home, it is the responsibility of the man to basically put himself in harm's way, even if it means he has to give up his life in order to protect, in order to basically secure his wife and children. This is something that is great in terms of the blessing that she's getting, and therefore it comes with a higher level of rights as well. And we mentioned the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah that highlighted this as well. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. That to the women, to the wives, is owed similar to what they owe the husband. But the husband, the man here, has a degree above in responsibility, and as a result also in rights as well. And similarly, there's another hadith, a very famous hadith of the Rasul ﷺ, where he asked a woman, do you have a husband? And she said, yes, I do. So he said, how are you with him? The woman responded and said, I do not neglect any of his rights except those that I'm unable to fulfill. So the Rasul ﷺ basically looked at her and he says, look at how you are with him, meaning your husband, for he is your paradise and for he is your hellfire. Meaning how a woman is with her husband and how well she strives in fulfilling his rights and fulfilling her responsibilities towards him will determine where she's going to be in akhirah as well. Meaning this is a great and tremendous responsibility that is owed by her to the husband. Now, the number one reason for this aspect, this priority that is given, is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed the man in the position of a qawwam. الرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ. A qawwam, as Imam Ibn Kathir in his tafsir, he defines the concept of a qawwam into four aspects. A qawwam is basically four elements, and this is absolutely essential for the men to understand as well. And it will put matters in perspective as to why certain rights are owed by the wife to the husband as well afterwards. A qawwam is basically, the first aspect is رئيسها, that he is her leader. He's basically a sayyid, a leader over her. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has established an institution in an organized fashion. Each and every single individual in that institution, just like any other organization, has certain roles and responsibilities to fulfill, but then there's one individual who's placed in a hierarchical leadership. That person, that imam, that ra'is, that head in the family context is going to be the husband. So that's the first element of a qawwam. Huwa ra'isuha, he's her leader. Huwa kabiruha, and he's also somebody who is bigger. He's the bigger person. Meaning that, just like for example a CEO, when he manages an organization, he does not deal with the everyday minutia details. He looks at the matters from the top. Meaning he has an element or a responsibility to plan ahead, to make sure that each and every single individual who's placed under his responsibility are taken care of. This is basically what it means when Ibn Kathir rahimahullah mentioned huwa kabiruha, he's the bigger person here. Al-hakimu alayha, and he's also a hakim. A hakim is somebody who basically rules, he has the final say in the matter. And this is again part of the same mentality of an institution. Whenever there's a conflict, it is the imam that basically lifts that conflict. And there's a very famous qa'idah or a maxim in fiqh as well, for those who want to study that as well, that al-hukm al-hakim أو القاضي أو الإمام في مسائل الخلاف أو الاجتهاد يرفع الخلاف. That the imam, the qadi, the leader in matters that there's a difference of opinion on, it is the imam that lifts the khilaf, the differences of opinion. And that imam within the context of the family is the man, the husband. And the last aspect of being a qawwam, وَمُؤَدِّبُهَا, he's the one who basically disciplines. Just like it is the responsibility of a leader, when one of his associates goes out of bounds and transgresses, it is the leader's responsibility to hold them accountable and to discipline them in order to ensure that there's unity and harmony. This is basically what it means to be a qawwam, to be a leader. 4 elements. So now in order to facilitate this position, the responsibilities of the women towards the husband are basically, it can be summarized into 4. The first aspect is obedience. Obedience is from the very essential right in order to maintain that harmony, that unity. Because again, like we mentioned, he's the one in charge of planning. He's the one in charge of ensuring that each and every single individual in his family are taken care of. Not just today, but also 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and so on and so forth. So in order to facilitate that vision, it is very important for a woman to be supportive of that. And support here means obedience. That there should not be any kind of khilaf or rebellion towards the husband. And there's a famous hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when a woman observes her prayers and she fasts the month of Ramadan and she protects her private parts, her chastity, and obeys the husband, then she will be allowed entry into paradise from any of its gates. All the gates will be open for a woman who fulfills these fundamental foundational aspects as well. And subhanAllah, with such a great reward, you can see the relative difficulty that this responsibility comes with as well. It's not meant to be easy. It is meant to be a test. It's meant to be a trial for many women to submit, especially if, let's say, the husband is lacking in certain leadership qualities as well, which again, by virtue of him also being a human being, he's not going to be able to fulfill each and every single element of leadership in the most perfect way. He's going to make mistakes as well. But that still makes it a fitna, for which there's a great and tremendous reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. There's also another hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he was asked, which woman is the best? Who is the best woman? And the Rasul ﷺ responded and he said, the one who makes him happy when he looks at her, meaning she's pleasing, her demeanor, her looks, her character, her voice, her words, her mannerism is something that is pleasing to him. When he commands her to do something, she obeys him. And she does not go against his wishes for something that has to do with regards to herself or her wealth. Meaning that if she wants to do something, she will seek the counsel of the one who has taken an oath by Allah SWT to take care of her. This is the quality of the best women as per the Rasul ﷺ. And obedience basically is first and foremost an intimacy. And we'll discuss a little bit more and expand a little bit more in the second right. The first aspect is intimacy. The second aspect is also an optional acts of worship. Meaning an optional salah, an optional fast, in the optional hajj, umrah, etc. She has to seek her husband's permission before she does that. It is haram for example, a woman to fast on Mondays or Thursdays as an optional fast until and unless her husband actually approves of it. Okay? So this is another aspect. The next aspect of obedience would be, for example, in leaving the house. It is required for her either directly, explicitly, or having an implicit understanding with her husband to seek his permission before she leaves the home. And that includes also working as well. If the wife wants to work, she has to seek her husband's permission before she does that. She cannot force him to allow her to work either within the bond of marriage, but she has the responsibility of seeking permission before she does that. And this again is an example of maintaining that relationship between the husband and the wife where he is able to take care of her. How can he take care of her if she just willy-nilly leaves the home whenever she wants? No, there has to be a level of care and concern that if she's going somewhere, he has to know exactly where she's going. In case that if something happens, he will be on the hook. He will be the one responsible for anything that happens in that kind of a situation. So effectively, when it comes to obedience, there are 5 factors that we can summarize that will make it obligatory on the wife to obey her husband. Okay? The first of those 5 elements is that it needs to be permissible. So it cannot be something that is haram, that the husband is telling her to do, and she does it. In fact, if he tells her to do something haram, it is fard upon her to disobey him. Because there's no obedience to a creation of Allah in the disobedience to the Creator. The second aspect is that it cannot be in continuously neglecting something that is considered a sunnah. Like we mentioned, for example, if she wants to fast Mondays or Thursdays or the 3 white nights and so on and so forth, she has to seek permission from him. And he can deny her that as well. But he cannot permanently bar her from doing something that is a sunnah. So he can tell her every now and then, but he cannot fully say to her that, no, you will never fast your voluntary fast, or you will never do a voluntary umrah. He cannot do that at all. Another aspect is that what he commands her to do must be something that is sensible. Something that has some form of a meaning behind. And this sensibility is not according to the wife, but it is sensibility according to somebody who will be neutral in that situation. So it has to be sensible. And some of the fuqaha give an example, like if a man tells his wife to go and face the wall for an hour, that is something that is beyond sensibility. She should not obey her husband in that aspect. So it has to be something that has meaning, something that is sensible. SubhanAllah, when the fuqaha mention these kind of extreme examples, it usually comes because somebody somewhere in the world has done something like that, unfortunately. So, third aspect, it has to be sensible. The fourth is similar as well, that it has to be purposeful. That it cannot be something that is completely frivolous. So sensible and purposeful, we can combine it into one point. And the last aspect is that it cannot be harmful to her. So it must be harmless inherently. If these conditions are met, if a man tells his wife to do something, she has to do it, as per the obligation that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.